advice for somebody like me. I was Judy's math student for a long time, and my father was an English professor and a translator. And so he lived with my late husband and I for quite a long time after he retired from Hong Kong, and he moved in with us. And so there's just a whole house full of readers. But I did always trust Judy, so I didn't read anything that it does not inspire me to practice. So, but these days, something I read that actually really inspired me to practice comes up more often. And it's sort of these things crystallize. Of course, throughout the years, I read here and I read there. And this is, practice is before speech and before thinking. And if you don't practice, you don't really hear much, or you don't really see much. But if you practice for a long time and you read something, then things start to appear and you start to kind of click, you start to see something. So there is this wonderful Zen master from China, and his name is Tai Hui. And happened to be, this is one of my most favorite ancient Zen masters in the Chinese lineage. And this thing always appears these days. Yeah. It says, ancestor teacher comes from the West. It only means summer is hot, winter is cold. So I find it very interesting that that it started to appear again. Yeah, this is something that really inspired me to practice a long time ago. When I first come to practice, I love Zen Master Tai Hui, and so I read this little book that is a collection of his letters from him to his lay students. And it was very incredible during his time that he actually have lots of lay students, okay? And including quite a few female lay students. And not only that he takes the female students, he also give transmission to a couple of very famous females and masters during Chinese history. So I always feel this affinity whenever I read his letter. I felt like he is speaking to me, directly. But then years has gone by, I read more stuff, then I forgot about that little book. But these days, this particular face started to appear, and it was very wonderful. It's very intimate. Usually it came up in the middle of walking or cooking my meal. It just come up, it sort of come up in such an interesting time, and it's a very, very wonderful thing that I find it's very inspirational, and to have this face kept on coming up. Yeah, it's very wonderful. And we have several different forms of practice. So today we had a sitting practice. And for those of you who have come practice with us for a while, at the Zen Center, and then that we also have chanting practice on Sunday. And then we also have a very important practice in the Korean tradition. We are a Korean school. We do bowing, full prostration. And on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday morning, when we're open, we do 108 bows in the morning. And then we have one chant, then we sit. Then we read koan practice. We read a koan. And so this is another practice, we have this still now in Kansas Zen Center, every other Saturday. That we have koan interviews without two teachers. Okay. And so little by little, our schedule sort of resumed to something quite similar to what we always have 5 days practice in Kansas Zen Center. And what I find it's most important for this practice is practice with a group is extremely important. And we get each other's energy and we support each other's practice. And you find out what you like and what you don't like. And you also find out when you get what you want or what you like, it's turned out to be not so good either. So, and this is a very important thing then when we practice with a group. So instead of saying something about ancient Zen story, I wanted to share a story that actually happened within our own Sangha. And it's in Kansas Zen Center. And this comes all the time these days, just very inspiring. And so last year we had this huge tornado in Kansas, May, something I couldn't remember the time, but I remember that was the last day that I was on campus in my office. I teach mathematics. So I just drove in and handing all the final exams that I graded and handing the grade. It was a wonderful feeling usually that day. It's like a done, then you could be gone for a while. But then I have a little bit of something I still need to do. So I live in Lawrence, but I also have a little flat on the plaza. Okay, so I teach night classes, so after, Tuesday, Monday, Wednesday night, if it's finished too late and I work too late, then I just drove there and used the flat to get more work done. So I text my friend who also live in the building. I said, oh my goodness, this is so wonderful. I'm done. And I try to figure out if I should go home and get the very last bit of stuff done, or should I just stay here and work a little bit more? And my friend's very funny, and she just said, if I were you, I would not go back to Lawrence. I was like, oh, what's going on? He said, the sirens are running over there. It's tornado. I said, oh, okay, so I'll just pack up and I'm coming this way then. So, and she said, have your radio on because it's coming this way. It probably moves faster than your car. She grew up in Western Kansas, so she really knows how to watch these things. So I said, okay. So I packed up, got into my car. Then I start to drive. And of course, the radio keep on saying, it's coming your way. It's just arrived, Olesa, it just arrived. So I was like, oh, the tornado is chasing after me, So when I crossed the state line, and I entered the Missouri, and I no longer know where it's going to happen because I don't really know the counties over there. I said, oh God, Plaza, which county is that? But it was funny. So I kept on driving and kept on driving. So eventually I ended up in the public parking garage on the plaza right beside the Unity Temple, where we have a sitting group, which is led by Charlie, who is up here. And I think I parked on 3rd floor. And when I got out, I said, oh, this is the time that the plaza group is sitting, and I should go check to see if there's sitting going on. And I went up to the Unity Plaza and climbing up to 4th floor. And about the 2nd floor, I heard the 5 minutes Motek was hitting from the 4th floor. And when I appear on the 4th floor, and I saw Charlie there with his robes and casa and Motek. That was one of the most enlightened moments that I think I've had in the recent days. And I always remember Charlie at the foot of the staircase and with that Motek in the middle of the tornado siren. And then we practiced until more sirens come in, and then we had to stop. So thank you, Charlie. And thank you all who are coming with us, practice today here online. And thank you, my teachers. And if you have any questions, the following in question answer session goes to Judy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ting. So the way we're doing this is everyone's muted except the speaker. And if you have a question, unmute yourself and ask the speaker. Before I ask for questions, I want to mention that this was going to be our big Buddha's birthday celebration, and we were going to have 2 people take 5 precepts and 2 people take 10 precepts, and we were going to have all this wonderful potluck food. And here we are, have a piece of cake. Do you like this cake? So yeah. So are there any questions? So just unmute yourself if you have a question.
Hello, I have a question.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Rusty. I'm completely new to Buddhism. So I wanted to thank you for having these online sessions. I was actually kind of intimidated to go to your Zen Center, but I signed up for your email chain. And when I saw this email, I started coming to your sessions every Sunday. So I think this is my 5th one now. So thank you for that. I've been reading a book that I've had for a long time called A Buddhist Bible, edited by Dwight Goddard, I believe it is. And I'm reading the Four Noble Truths, and I keep stumbling upon this word ego, which I believe I know what ego means in like the Western kind of Freudian psychology. But I was curious if it means something different when Buddha's talking about it, because I see it come up so many times.
So this is an interesting translation because the versions that I know don't mention ego at all.
See.
Okay. So the four noble truths, the first truth, and I'm glad you brought this up. It's one of those fundamental things that, you got to keep saying again and again and again. The first truth is that all existence is suffering. Now, that doesn't mean we go around suffering all the time. That means that suffering is built into our lives. It's not something that we can avoid it. And that's very interesting because, Buddha was this prince, and supposedly he was raised in such a way that he never suffered. They just hid anything unpleasant from him. And then one day he goes out with his charioteer. He has this gorgeous wife and this fabulous harem. I mean, they, according to some of the early stories, had like 500 wives or something. But he has this particularly gorgeous wife, Yasodhara, and he has this beautiful son among his 1,000 children, and all this kind of stuff. And he and this beautiful palace and everything's fabulous. And he goes out with his charioteer. He sneaks out because he realizes, this isn't really how things are. And he goes out and he sees a sick person, and he says, "What's that?" And the charioteer says, "That's a sick person." So if you believe that, he'd never seen a sick person before. Have a bridge across the Kansas River. I'll be happy to sell you. But anyway, so the story goes, he sees a sick person. And then the next night, first he sees an old person, then he sees, or maybe he's sick, then an old person. Hey, I'm an old person. I don't look so bad. But anyway, he sees an old person. He says, "What's that?" And that's an old person. Then he sees a dead person. And supposedly he's never seen a dead person, which kind of hard to imagine. By then he was like, 30? People around him must have died. But anyway, he sees a dead person. And then the next night he sees an ascetic, a wandering seeker. And he says, "Whoa, what's that? Oh, that's somebody, on the path. Oh, I want to be like that." So, and then, the rest of the story. So suffering is kind of baked in. It's not, the idea in life is not to run around and avoid it. The idea is not the idea, but our job is to really face it and accept it, not in the sense of saying, "Oh, this is actually a good thing." A lot of people say, "Oh, this is teaching me." No, not that. It's just, it is exactly what it is. And you just go from there. Reality, Buddhism is a reality-based practice. So yeah, suffering is intrinsic to all of existence, not just human life, all of existence. Suffering is baked in. But suffering has 3 causes. The mental suffering that we face has 3 causes. The second truth is, here are the 3 causes of suffering. Desire, and this not only means wanting what we want, but also means not wanting what we don't want. So I hate cilantro, right? So my desire to not have cilantro, that's a desire also. So desire is one, anger is another one. And then ignorance. And ignorance is in some sense the root. And what ignorance doesn't mean like stupidity, like you don't know how many planets go around the sun. You know, that's not what ignorance means. Ignorance means ignorance of our true nature. So the first truth is suffering is baked in. Actually, the word is dukkha, which really means this feeling of being, everything's unsatisfactory. Everything's unsatisfactory. So that's dukkha. And then the causes of dukkha. And then the third truth is very simple. It says there's a way out. It doesn't have to be like this. You don't have to have this feeling of unsatisfactoriness all the time. You can completely be present with whatever it is that you're dealing with. You can say, yes, this is how it is. I'm not going to try to escape it. I'm going to use it. I'm going to work through it, you know? So there is a way out of the dukkha part, the mental upsetness. So when my teacher, Zen Master Sung-san, when he had a very bad diabetes and heart condition most of his life, most of his adult life. And he almost died when he was going through a tour of Europe. He had this big tour of Europe, and there's actually a video of it. Somebody here, I think, was looking at it. I forget the name. You can put it in the chat box if you remember. Anyway, he was going around Europe, and someone asked him a question. When you die, you know, you're a great Zen master. When you die, like, what Buddhist heaven will you go to? And he says, oh, I die, go to hell. And they go, what? You're a great Zen master. What do you mean you're going to go to hell? He says, yeah, I go to hell, start Zen center. So even if you're in hell, you know, you can help people, right? So that's the third noble truth. There's a way out. And then the fourth noble truth tells you the way. And the way is, traditionally, the way is the Eightfold Path. So correct view, correct livelihood, correct speech, all these things. And I never remember it because in Zen, the way out is very simple, practice. Just sincere and regular practice. That's the way out. So those are the Four Noble Truths, and ego doesn't appear in them anywhere. Okay?
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. I'm told Eric, who is new to us, Eric lives in Lansing. The video is called "Wake Up on the Road with the Zen Master." Thank you, Eric. Good. Okay, are there any other questions? Yes, Tim, and unmute yourself, please. Yeah, you don't have to raise your hand. You just unmute yourself and shout. Oh, I'll unmute you. Oh, no. Okay. All right.
I just have a question. I'm a curious guy.
Okay.
So a couple of weeks ago, I was on my morning walk and I was walking around this pond near my house, and there were 8 turtles on a log. And as I was walking by, I thought, you know, they're just turtles being turtles, and they have no idea what's going on in human world right now and could care less. Mm-hmm. And then I got home and I walked into my yard, and the maple tree was starting to leaf out. And I thought, the maple tree's just doing what maple trees do and has no idea how anxious I am about all this. And then last week, Stan did a remembrance of Sung San, which was very moving. Thank you for that. And at the end, he said some of the words related to the precept ceremony, yet spring comes and the grass grows by itself. And then yesterday, I was reading So-san's A Mirror of Zen, and those same words are in there. And since he's commenting on them, sorry, this is a long setup to the question. I assume that goes way back before him. So my question is, can you share your thoughts on how, I know this is coming up a lot for me, but it may be coming up for other people. Can you share your thoughts on how this particular teaching, how we can use that in the current times we're going through?
So my thoughts are not important. Also, your thoughts are not important. So you can use everything. You can use everything. That's very important. So yeah, we can project thinking onto a situation. We can say, spring comes, the grass grows by itself. Yeah, this is a saying that goes back probably at least 1,000 years, maybe more than that, you know. So yeah, you can say that, and then you can build all kinds of superstructures on that. You know, you can say, the earth is teaching us something. Life is really wonderful no matter what happens. Or you can say, the earth doesn't care about us. Spring comes, the grass grows by itself. We're not necessary. Our life has no meaning. You can take the same thing, you know, and use it to say, life is wonderful, even though, you know, this horrible thing is happening, but life is wonderful. Or you can say, this terrible thing, you know, spring comes, the grass grows, so our life is meaningless. You could do whatever you want. And you can probably think of 5 or 6 other things that you can do with that. That's not important. What's important is, do you have to weed your garden? Do you have to mow your lawn? That's what's important. What is your job? So all these big intellectual superstructures that we build, you know, Zen means cut through all of that. Don't fall for it. So the 6th patriarch, and I'm forgetting the exact phrase, and maybe if someone remembers, they can type it into the chat box. I think Ting probably remembers it. But the 6th patriarch basically said, all of our trouble comes from thinking. Everything comes from our thinking. That's our biggest problem. So yeah, it's wonderful. The trees are blooming, and the grass is growing, and you can really enjoy that. And go ahead, do that, please. I do. You know, we go to the wetlands a lot, and we look at all the birds and the grasses and everything like that. That's wonderful, yeah. But don't make anything. It's just exactly what it is, and your life is exactly what it is. And our life together right now in this bizarre situation where there's so many people I love on this screen, and I have not been in the same room with them. What do you say, Rusty, for 5 weeks now? You know, that's crazy. But here we are, you know, that's our situation. So what do we do? That's the question. Just what is it? And what do we do? That's what's important. So we have this practice, you know, our practice in Korean style Zen is great question practice, Wado, or Wadu practice. And what that means is great question. And there are 2 ways to use it. And one way is, what am I? And another way is, what is this? And those are actually the same. There's no distinction. So you can sit there, you know, what am I? Or you can sit there, what is this? And we call this the great question. Because if you say, what am I, very deeply, you don't end up with, I live in Lawrence, Kansas, and I'm a Zen teacher, and I used to be a math teacher, and I have a husband, and you know, that's not the answer, you know. The answer isn't, you know, your ethnic background, or what country you live in, or how many languages you speak. That's not the answer. This what am I is deep. It's big, it's huge, it's the whole universe. So it's cutting through all of that stuff. Just cut through, cut through, cut through, cut through. Like a hot knife through butter is one of the images that's used. So just cut through all of your thinking. Just, the grass is growing. Soon it will have to be cut if you haven't had to do it already. You know, the trees are blooming. In a few months, you're going to either rake or not rake the leaves, depending on your opinion about raking leaves. You know, either you want to provide shelter for animals, or you want to have a pretty lawn, or whatever it is. Yeah. So that's all. Just what is your job? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
I have a question. This is Liz.
Sure. Yeah.
Last week, I talked about the Dharani, the great Dharani.
Yeah.
As a mantra. Okay, so I have the instructional video or instructional audio CD.
Yeah.
Video of the chant, and and so my question is, when I heard mantra, I thought of something very short, that I could repeat when I'm walking, or when my mind starts to wander, and I can come back to. Yet the Great Dharani that's in the practice manual and on the CD is like 4 minutes long, when you chant it. And so is the mantra that, or is there another, it's kind of a technical question because I don't know and I haven't been around the Zen Center that much. So is there a shorter mantra, or is the Great Dharani just the Great Dharani just as a whole,
So I'll tell you what the word Dharani means. It means long mantra.
Ah, okay. That answers my question.
And since you come from a Japanese practice,
Yeah.
you probably chanted it under the name of the Great Compassionate Dharani or something like that. And if you pay attention, you'll see that you can almost follow. The texts are very similar. So these all come from an old Sanskrit text, which is there's no trace of it except in the well, it first went to China, so there's a Chinese version, and then from China it went to Tibet. It went to, from your point of view, it went to Tibet, it went to Korea, it went to Japan. Okay, so it went to those places, and then it gets transliterated into these very different languages because Sanskrit is Indo-European, and Chinese and Tibetan and Korean. Chinese Korean and Japanese are somewhat related. Tibetan, I think, is completely different. Stan can correct me on this. And Chinese, I believe, is different, though it obviously has a big influence on Japanese and Korean. So it gets translated into all these things. So it doesn't sound exactly the same, but I've practiced a lot in Japanese places, and I can almost follow the Korean version when I do the Japanese version. So this is the mantra of compassion, the great long Dharani, the Dharani of compassion. And all we really know about it is that it's invoking Avalokiteshvara, otherwise known as Kuan Yin, in the Korean tradition, Kwanseum Bosal, also in Japanese, Kannon. So this is the great bodhisattva of compassion. Dennis is in our real Dharma room because he lives at the Zen Center. I'm tempted to say, Dennis, take your iPad around and show us all our wonderful Zen Center. But maybe after speaking, we could do a brief tour of the Zen Center for people who miss it and people who've never seen it. Carol's raising her hand. Yeah. So anyway, so I have this crackpot book, which we tried looking for it, so that you can find translations of the Dharani online, and they're way off base. You can't translate it. We don't know what it is, There's Chan Master Hua, who built the city of 10,000 Buddhas, and he was a very great Mahayana teacher, sort of Chan, but more like sort of magical than what we know as Zen or Sun, or anyway, he had this book, which I think we found it again, and in it he takes the Chinese syllables that are used to transliterate the Sanskrit, and he gives magical meanings to them. So it's like, if your stomach hurts, recite these 6 syllables 17 times while standing on your head, kind of thing. So it's a really fascinating little book. And online, let's see, DT Suzuki has a translation which you can find online, and that's just you can't translate it. He's making it up. But the best one is, there's this, I don't know how I found it, there's this book I found from India. It was a scholar in India who's a scholar of Buddhism, but not a Buddhist. He's a Hindu, but he's a Buddhist scholar, just like, Christians can be Buddhist scholars and Buddhists can be Christian scholars and stuff. So he's a Buddhist scholar. And he looked at the Japanese and the Korean and also the Vietnamese. and the Tibetan versions, and he tried to go backwards to reconstruct the Sanskrit. And he comes up with a translation, and he decides that in the middle there's this Hari Hara or Hara Hari, I forget the order of it. And he decides that this means that Avalokiteshvara is actually this particular two-headed Hindu god, Hari Hara or Hara Hari, I forget. And it's one of those wonderful crackpot things where people just get so into it and they just kind of dive down deep. And I love his translation because his translation is a giant snake. And when I first started practicing, and every time I would chant that, I would, in my mind, there was a certain place where I would see this giant snake, sort of going back and forth like that. And so I kind of like that version, but it's also crackpot. I mean, you can't translate it. It is a mantra. That's what it is. Now, when you say using for meditation, actually, that was what my teacher used as a meditation practice, was doing it so faster than sub-vocalizing. I think he could do it in under 30 seconds in his mind, maybe under 10 seconds, just very fast. I mean, you can't say it that fast, just sort of perceive the whole thing almost at once, just boom. And he was very big on mantra, because he said, and very fast mantra, not slow mantra, not sinking into it, but very fast, very focused. Like Kwanseum Bosal, the Bodhisattva of Compassion, anyone can do that as a fast mantra, because but as I said, faster than you can even sub-vocalize it. So you're sitting there and just really, really fast. And he said, it's like a washing machine in the spin cycle. You're just getting all the water out. You're getting all the crud out, all the crap out, just going around like that. So actually this 4-minute mantra can be a practice, but it's not as a 4-minute practice. It's as a really short, like that, just really, really fast. And that was his practice. So thank you for your question. And Margaret, I hear you. Margaret made a comment that I should have said 6 ancestor instead of 6 patriarchs, which is correct, because the actual Chinese word is ancestor. It doesn't have any gender attached. So thank you, Margaret, for your correction. Yeah. So, okay. If there's another question, I'll take it. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been meditating, and my wife joined a couple times. And she asked why we meditate with our eyes kind of open instead of closing our eyes. So what would be a good answer for that?
Yeah. So when you close your eyes, then you're cut off. So when you open your eyes, then you don't go inward. You're still connected to this universe. So that's why we keep our eyes open. You can't close your ears, unless, of course, you have hearing problems. But unless you have vision problems, if you keep your eyes open, it helps. It helps connect you. You can't turn off your skin sensations. You can't turn off your ear sensations. You can't turn off your nose sensations. But so much of our brain is in processing vision that when we close our eyes, we lose something of the world around us. So that's why we keep our eyes open. So thank you for your question. Yeah. Personally, when I close my eyes, I fall asleep. So there's that too. Okay, Dennis, do you want to take us on do you want to unmute yourself, or I'll unmute you and take us on a little tour of the dining room, the Dharma room, because you're unmuted. So Dennis is back. He did the last 5 weeks of the long Kyelche, the 3-month retreat in Providence. And he heroically drove straight back because he didn't want to risk going to no hotel. And he lives at the Zen Center. So show us the place. We missed it.
All right. Be glad to. How much you want to see? Like the first floor, second floor? The whole
No, just show us the Dharma room.
The Dharma room, all right.
Oh, but you
Sitting out
because we don't have Wi-Fi in there, do you?
I'll walk in and see what happens.
Okay. Dennis
If I
may
disappear, I'll come back out.
Okay.
So here's the robe room.
You can see why we're not wearing robes, because our robes are all hanging up.
There's an entryway on either side. So far, so good. There's the altar. I'll walk around the perimeter and point it towards the altar.
Oh, and show us the bell.
Here's the bell.
And hit the bell. We all miss the bell sound. This is such a treat. Thank you.
Sure. Let's see. Little artwork in the corner. Wow, it just started pouring rain.
Yeah, because you hit the bell.
Probably market that somehow. All right, here's the altar. Must be a way to reverse this camera, but I'm not sure how to do it on on Zoom. The rest of it is basically.
Okay, Dennis just died. He disappeared. Oh, yeah, good, you're back.
Okay. Yeah, I'm heading toward the exit. Out toward the robe area from the other side.
Thank you.
Sure.
We'll be back again. Someday we'll be back again. Okay, so now, so we just welcomed back Dennis, which was really nice. And what we're going to do now is we're going to break out into breakout rooms. So if you want to stay in chat, stay in chat. If you don't want to stay in chat, leave now so I know how many breakout rooms to have. So let's see how many people.
I'm going to eat breakfast.